Hey everybody, what's going on? And welcome back to another episode of the Saturdays in Stores podcast, which you can of course find right here on the Court Store Media Network. My name is Kanaye, and I want to start off by again apologizing for another episode that is not coming out on a Saturday. I'm not all too sure as to whether this episode will be going up on Sunday night or Monday morning. Nonetheless, though, I do want to apologize. I just got a little busy and it was tough to be able to get an episode out. But of course, UConn picked up a huge win at Fall Allen Fieldhouse this past Tuesday, 61-56. First win in program history against the Kansas Jayhawks. So definitely big getting that done, especially without your starting big man, Terrace Reed, on the road in what is supposed to be the toughest road environment to play in the country in college basketball. Then, of course, we also got a huge matchup coming up this upcoming Tuesday at Madison Square Garden against Florida, the reigning national champions, the team that took down UConn in the NCAA tournament last year in what is the Jimmy V Classic this year. So definitely big recap to go over regarding the Kansas game, and also a very big preview coming up for that Florida matchup as well. But before we get into all of that today, please engage with the videos you see on this channel in any way you can, whether it's liking, subscribing, or just telling other people about what we do here at the Court Storm. All goes a really long way with influencing YouTube's algorithm and getting more people to see our videos. So let's get right into it. Again, UConn won against Kansas in Fog Allen, 61-56. This was definitely a game I was worried about. If I were to pick one game on our non-conference slate that definitely worried me the most, it was definitely this game at Fog Allen against Kansas, just because of how hard it is to win there. Just because you have a lot of guys that are in new roles on this team, new guys who have come in, Silas Demery, BRAYLON Mullins, Eric Riva, wasn't all too sure how they were going to be able to handle that sort of pressure and that sort of an environment this early in their UConn careers. But I got to say, I think one of the biggest takeaways by far was just the outstanding play from both Eric Riva and BRAYLON Mullins. The freshman really showed up, and UConn definitely does not win this game without those two. Definitely going to touch a lot more on both those guys in just a bit. But I do want to start off with kind of talking about the injury situation that loomed around this game. Of course, Kansas was without Darren Peterson, who obviously has a chance to go number one in this year's or this upcoming NBA draft. And I honestly think that if DP plays in this game, Kansas probably wins. UConn by no means played a great game offensively. I really liked what I saw them defensively, and I'll touch on more on both those things coming up. But yeah, Darren Peterson I think is a game changer, and the way this game was played, I think if he is on the floor, then that definitely gives Kansas a really good chance to win without Terrace Reed. Now, if both those guys play, I still think UConn wins. But if it were a hypothetical scenario that Darren Peterson plays and Terrace doesn't, then Kansas is probably really tough to beat in that scenario. But nonetheless, DP didn't play. Terrace also didn't play. I think, again, it was kind of a precautionary thing where they wanted him back for the Illinois game. They might have rushed him slightly. He obviously looked a step slow, which I talked about in last week's episode, recapping that Illinois win. If you haven't seen that, definitely go check that out. But again, I just think it's a matter of wanting to make sure he's as close to being 100% as possible to get him ready for that Jimmy V Classic game against Florida, where he's going up against what most consider as the best front line in the country between Alex Condon, Ruben Chinelu, and Thomas Hauks. Definitely something that you want your big man, guy who's averaging close to 20 and 10 in the games he's played this year. You definitely want him on the floor for that. So I definitely think in a game where you're going up against a big like Florida Badunga, where he's not really as imposing physically as some of the other centers like a Tomislav Visage or a Mo Krivas or a Thomas Houck, Alex Kahn, and Ruben Chinelu like they're about to face on Tuesday, then I think you're in a scenario where, hey, let's sit Terrace for this. We believe in Eric. He can get the job done. And that's what Eric did, which I think at this point is a fair time to get into the play out of the freshman. I mean, Eric Riva obviously got the start with Terrace out. He had 12 points, 6 for 8 from the floor. Was able to get on the glass pretty well, 8 rebounds. I think the job he did defending the rim was really impressive. He finished with 2 blocks, and he had that really crucial denial at the rim. I don't necessarily know it was a block. It was more so, I think, just of a straight up contest where he had on the rim where Kansas wanted to get to the dribble drive with Melvin Council Jr., if I'm not mistaken, towards the end of the game when they were only down 2 points or 3 points. I forget off the top of my head. A scenario where Kansas probably could have took the lead or tied the game, and Eric was able to really just make it a shot that was so hard to hit for the player on Kansas. I think it was Melvin Council who did it, but nonetheless, really strong just seeing how Eric has improved so far. He's come along already so far from where he started in that Boston College exhibition game. Dan Hurley talked about this in his post-game press conference. I just think, again, the minutes and the amount of experience he's getting playing with Terrace out to start the season, it's invaluable. It's really going to go it's going to do numbers for what this team is going into March, where you have a true tandem at center that you trust both those guys. There's no fall off when Terrace goes to the bench, and Eric can step in, fill that role, and play it really well. Of course, there's still areas he needs to improve upon. He needs to get a little bit better. I think moving his feet defensively. On top of that, he definitely needs to finish around the rim with a little bit more efficiency than what he's done to start the year. But I think give it a year when he comes back for his sophomore year, he's going to be a real problem nationally and in the Big East. But of course, he was a major factor as to why UConn was able to win this game. So a lot of credit goes to Eric Ryba there. The other freshman, BRAYLON Mullins, of course, this is his first, I think the real first taste we are getting of BRAYLON in college basketball. Of course, he played against Illinois, but he was on a minutes restriction. So we didn't really get to see the full outlook of what BRAYLON Mullins can do for this UConn team this year. We kind of got it in this game against Kansas. Of course, it's tough to get the full picture without Terrace playing, without Silas kind of being where he needs to be just yet. But nonetheless, you saw BRAYLON come in. He went 3 for 9 from 3, so obviously you'd like to see him hit a couple more of those attempts. A lot of those misses, though, they were just in and out. They were dead on, right on target, just couldn't fall. And it is what it is. That's what you got to live with as a shooter. I'm sure we're going to see nights where he shoots 3 for 9 again. And then we'll also have nights where he shoots 6 for 9 or makes 5 to 7 threes. So I just think it was so impressive for me seeing BRAYLON in what really was only his second college game come into Fog Allen Fieldhouse, which is advertised as the hardest place to play in college basketball on the road. And to do what he did, I think knocking down that 3, banking it in from where he shot it on the left wing was just so important for him. Just being able to see one go through the net, I think that's just opened things up. The job he did and just being able to move off the ball, relocating. I think his off-ball movement, you can't put enough emphasis on how important that is when you are a shooter, when you are a freshman that's trying to prove himself early in his collegiate career. I think that's so vital to what both his development is going to be and what the development of this team overall is going to be once we get down the stretch of the season. And to see him do it this early on, I just think it's so impressive. He had 2 other threes. He missed one from the corner, was able to relocate, come back out. Quick memory, forgot the miss, let it fly again, knocked it down from the top of the key. I just think stuff like that, the above the shoulders stuff, the non-negotiables, playing defense, playing with energy and effort, that's all stuff he checks the boxes in. And I was really, really impressed to see where BRAYLON Mullins is right now. Of course, we kind of need to see it over a larger sample size just to be sure, but it does seem like there is some validity to the hype he got over this offseason from both high school, people who cover high school basketball, people who cover UConn basketball. Dan Hurley himself had a lot to rave about BRAYLON over the summer, and it's clear that he's going to be a major factor as to what this team can be this year. And I'm excited to see some of the hopefully continued big performances we see out of him as the season goes on. But on top of that, I think the other guy who really played well in this game was Solo Ball. I think he got off to a really hot start. This is really the first game that we've seen him shoot. This is probably the best shooting game we've seen out of him this year from 3. He shot 3 for 7. Of course, he'd like to see a few more of those attempts go down, but I think seeing the shot fall in a tough environment to play in like that, it's important. I know Solo Ball spoke to Ray Allen following the Illinois game, just Ray trying to see where Solo's headspace was at, try to get him out of that shooting slump that he's kind of been in to start the year. He didn't shoot it great against Texas A&M, I'll admit, but that Florida matchup, that's something that he mentioned he's had circled on his calendar for a while now. So maybe that is the game that we see Solo Ball kind of come back to the form he was in last year. Nonetheless, though, I think what was really stuck out to me was the point in the game where guy in Kansas shooting a free throw. Solo, one of the Kansas players is chirping to Solo. I forget who it was, and Solo kind of in a way laughed it off and then comes down on offense and comes off a flare screen and just bangs a 3 home. And I just think that was really a good indicator of where Solo still has that confidence. He's still going to let it fly. He's still going to shoot it. I do think he's starting to kind of foul bait less as opposed to what he was doing in some of the games leading up to this one at Fog Allen. So that's definitely important to see, considering I just think you're too good of a shooter to really be looking for the foul call on every single attempt. You have the size, you have the wingspan, you have the elevation on your shot to be able to just rise up and hit it and not worry as much about trying to draw the fouls, because I'd rather get 3 points there than, not get 3 at all if you don't draw the foul. So definitely good seeing Solo do that. I think he did a good job in getting downhill. That's definitely something that he's improved upon, as well as just him being able to get to that kind of mid-range jumper, that quick pull-up. He was able to get, I believe it was either Bryson Tiller or Floyd Badunga whenever one of those 2 bigs was switched onto him. He was able to get a head full of steam, go downhill, and then kind of pull up around the free throw line and knock that down. So 2 big shots that was back-to-back, though that 1-3 he came off the flare screen, and then getting to the mid-range jumper, pull-up jumper was definitely a big swing in the game that definitely gave UConn the momentum back. I also think a big momentum changing sequence from a player came from out of Alex Caravan, where he had a 7-point run on his own where he comes down, gets a layup inside, and then comes back down the next time around and gets a guy off the ground with one of the best head fakes I think I've ever seen out of Alex Caravan. It was really, I legitimately thought he was shooting it as I was watching the game, and then he's able to get downhill, get to the basket, score. Next time comes down, bangs home a really deep three. I mean, that's kind of Alex's trademark at this point in his career. So it was definitely a huge game. Shows you what Alex can do in impacting the game offensively. It's very clear that UConn's success in games is very much tied to how Alex is performing and playing. And in a game where UConn definitely faced a deficit at one point, I think it got up to 9 points at one point in the game. And I just think having that run that they went on in the second half to really give themselves the momentum and the lead overall to end up, not giving it up as the game went on, that was definitely impressive to see. And to see them handle both that deficit and as well as the late surge from Kansas after UConn took the lead, where it got really loud after the Florida Badunga and one dunk. I just think it shows you that this team doesn't waver. They don't fold under the pressure of an environment like that, which is, of course, so important in college basketball. And seeing a win where, they didn't have their best stuff offensively, but they were able to get stops. They were able to lock in defensively and play with effort and toughness and tenacity. That's something that's so important. It's like I've talked about in the past to start this year. It's completely different from the point that this team, or this program, I should say, was at last year, where they couldn't stop the dribble drives to save their life. They couldn't guard the perimeter. And it's different this year. I think Silas is a big factor as to why. I think Malachi is another big factor as to why. I just think having more committed guys with more commitment in getting these stops. I think Solo, he's still not the greatest defender, but there's an emphasis you can see out of Solo that he wants to be a better defender. He wants to do the things he needs to do for UConn to be able to get stops in big games. I think you see that out of Jalen Stewart. I think BRAYLON Mullins defended really well. Definitely think he fought defensively. Eric Riba, same thing goes with him. Terrace, I think, is another game changer once we get him back fully healthy. He's going to help a lot with rim protection. He's a little bit better in kind of defending ball screen, just when UConn is in their ball screen coverages. And I just think that you get Terrace back, you get your team fully healthy. It's going to be tough to score on this UConn team. I think we do have a good enough of a sample size now to say that, all right, this UConn team might have some stuff defensively where, like I talked about, you'd never think you're in a spot where UConn's defense is better than their offense under Dan Hurley, but that's just the way it is right now. And I think the offense is going to get there. You need to remember Silas isn't at the point where he needs to be just yet for UConn to be a national championship contender. I mean, I think they are, but I think for them to be a true potential favorite to win the Natty, Silas needs to get to the point where he needs to go. And just a matter of him finding the confidence, figuring out what he needs to do and when. I've talked about this to length already on some of the past few episodes. You tend to notice he looks over at Dan a little bit unsure about what to run, what to exactly do. He just needs to play. I think he's overthinking it slightly. And it's going to come with time. Dan Hurley came out and said that he thinks Silas is further along than Tristan Newton was in Tristan's first year with UConn. So I think that definitely is very meaningful. He's already had some big moments like he did in the BYU game, like he did spurted throughout the Illinois game. I think at times during the Arizona game, he played well offensively as well. It's just really a matter of him trying to figure out when to be in the facilitating state of mind or whether to be an aggressive state of mind and just being able to go one-on-one with the guy, get downhill and finish at the basket, draw a foul, kick it out to a shooter. And that's something that I definitely think is important, just considering that this UConn team doesn't really have a lot of guys who are great at just getting downhill and getting to the cup and being able to, finish around the rim. I think that's kind of the role Silas is going to have to be in, and I think he's capable of doing it. But at the same time, I definitely, that is one concern I do have for this team, that and just not necessarily having a true secondary ball handler right now, the way the two back-to-back championship teams under Dan Hurley at UConn did. Of course, Andre Jackson alongside T. New in the first of the two chips. And then in the second one, you of course had Cam and Steph Castle actually alongside Tristan. And I think BRAYLON Mullins can kind of fill that role. I think a lot of people, including myself, were hopefully expecting Solo to kind of step up, but I just don't think he is kind of in that spot right now. I still think he very much is kind of there to be a true scorer, and that's fine if that's what he is, as that's what his ceiling is as a player at UConn. That's fine. And Solo does need to be a big time scorer for this team to get where they want to go, being a Final Four and a national championship. But I think BRAYLON can definitely provide some secondary ball creation. I think he can, handle the ball when he has to. I wouldn't necessarily run him at point, but you're kind of limited to what you have, just because I don't think lineups that have both Malachi and Silas on the floor at the same time is really what the coaching staff at UConn wants, just considering you give up a lot of size when you bring Mally onto the floor. But nonetheless, I think Mally, he's been really, really good. It's very clear. He's all about winning. The personal stuff, that's out the window. He's here to win. He plays with a lot of toughness, and I think he's got a real chance to be one of those Andre Jackson, Cam Spencer types of guys for this year's UConn team, where he just pushes everyone, holds others accountable, plays with energy at all seconds of the game, every phase of the game. And that's what this UConn team needs. Again, like to see the secondary ball handler hopefully come to fruition. I'd like to see Silas, figure things out. But again, it's going to take time. It's really hard as a UConn point guard to figure it out right away. But I definitely think Silas can get there and be the player that we all know he can be for UConn this year. Now, I think that pretty much takes care of everything I had in terms of my takeaways from the Kansas game. Overall, really good win. Great seeing the defense continue to play really well. And Fog Allen, tough place to play. I think Bill Self's record there in non-conference is 160 something to now, I think 7 losses. That loss to UConn is now their 7th there. So definitely big time win there. I understand I understand they were without Darren Peterson, but nonetheless, no Terrace. You come down, you win on the glass, you hold Kansas to only 5 made field goals in the second half. Come out with a win and definitely put yourself in a good position to take on Florida in the Jimmy V Classic, which is what I'll be talking about right now. This is a very interesting matchup. I think a lot of people, including myself, most definitely expected Florida to be a little bit better than what they have been to start the year. I, in a way, felt that Florida on paper looked a lot more likely to repeat than UConn did in 23-24 following the first of their championships under Danny Hurley. Just because you have retention. You're bringing back Ruben Chinilu, Alex Condon, Thomas Houck. Thomas Houck has arguably looked like an All-American to start the year. He's very clearly the alpha for Todd Golden's Gators program this year. Now, I think the thing that's held Florida back is the defense. The guard play. The guard play, Xavier Lee, he's not there. That was definitely a concern I had over the offseason. I think after the 1-game sample size against Arizona, I thought maybe Xavier Lee is good enough to play at the high major level, or Power 5 level, I should say. But, that's 1 game. And I'm not saying Xavier Lee can't play at the Power 5 level. It's just been tough. I think he's still getting to his spots, but he's just not hitting. He's playing against a completely new caliber of athletes and size at the Power 5 level now, and he's struggled. And he's had 1 good game against Providence, but outside of that, it's been a tough going for Xavier to start the year. And I definitely think that's a player that thrives off of confidence, and that's not a player you want to get going, because he is really crafty. He's creative off the dribble. He's a guy that can break you down and get to his spot. Like I mentioned, he's still getting to his spots this year. He's just not hitting. So that's someone that you really got to stay in front of. Same thing goes with Boogie Flan. Florida arguably could have won that game down the stretch against Duke in Cameron Indoor. Just to, as a reminder, it's another really tough place to play. And just considering that in a game where they looked like they were completely out of it, for them to come storming back behind the performance Boogie Flan had in the second half, just shows you how talented this Florida team is, even though they haven't really had the success that a lot of people expected them to have to start the year. Those are 2 guards that, again, have been hot and cold this year. But nonetheless, they get going. They're tough to stop. They're all they're both very crafty off the dribble. Urban Clavzar is going to come off the bench, and he's an absolute shooting threat. You shoot the cover off the ball, he's going to lace it. You got to chase him off of screens. You got to go over the ball screens. Can't give him anything. And then down low, like I said, they have the 3-headed monster with 3 bigs. It's a very unique lineup that Todd Golden rolls out with his team this year. And I think it could pose some matchup problems. Thomas Houck playing the 3 is definitely a matchup nightmare in a way where you probably open up with Jalen Stewart guarding him or Braylon Mullins. I, again, don't really know who's going to get the start on Tuesday night, just considering Braylon's kind of getting back to form, and Stewie, has been a starter to begin the year, but we'll see what happens going forward. But nonetheless, I think Jay Ross and Stewart are going to be crucial in defending Thomas Houck, just because I think with how well Tommy Houck can move at 6'10", 6'9", I forget off the top of my head exactly how tall he is, it causes problems. And he's played really, really well to start the year. Like I said earlier, he's definitely been their best player. And I think that can definitely pose a little bit of an issue for UConn defensively. On top of that, you have great size followed behind Thomas Houck with Alex Condon and Ruben Chinilu. Caravan's going to be a big factor in this game. How he guards Alex Condon is going to be big. He's not really the best when it comes to just defending a bully ball type of player, which is kind of what Alex Condon is. He can step out, hit the 3 when space the floor. Ruben Chinilu is more of your traditional center, where he is kind of more so there as a lob threat, as a rim protector defensively. Guy who's just really only going to take shots inside the paint. So I expect if Terrace is playing, that's kind of the role he's in. Terrace needs to come up big. for UConn to win this game, they got to keep it close in the rebounding margin. And I think that if Terrace plays, there's a good chance that UConn can. If he doesn't, then Eric Ryba is going to be in a tough spot just to go up against a three-headed monster that early in your college career, as well as Ryba has played and how far he's come this early. It's still a lot to ask out of your freshman center. So I do hope that Terrace plays for the sake of just having a little bit more experience. He's gone against these guys last year in the NCAA tournament. Same thing goes with Solo Ball, who I alluded to earlier. Citing this game as one he's been circling or looking forward to for a long time, just being able to get that in what is a revenge game in the Jimmy V Classic at the Garden. I think Caravan has a lot of motivation on his plate as well going into this, and I'm sure Danny Hurley probably does above everyone else. So I'm excited. It should be a really good game. I'm really excited to see how if the defense can continue to play the way it has up to this point. I'm also really excited to see what hopefully is a glimpse as to how good this UConn offense has a chance to be. I just think that you get Silas to the point of where he needs to be as a point guard. You get Terrace back fully healthy. And then you have a lineup of Solo Ball, Alex Caravan, and Braylon Mullins. 3 guys who can run off a screen, shoot the ball. I just really don't know how you guard that. It's tough. I mean, you have Silas, a guy who can take you one-on-one, who's going to be able to hopefully make the right reads and make the right passes once he gets there at that point in his development as a point guard for UConn. Terrace Reed is really arguably a top 5 center in the country, hopefully a dominant force down low in the paint as the season continues to go on. Someone you can throw the ball to and trust you're either going to get 2 points, go to the line, or he's going to draw a double team and be able to kick it out to a shooter. And then again, the 3 shooters between Solo, AK, and BRAYLON, just being 3 guys who can run off the ball screens, run off the pin downs, flares, can cut off the ball, just move. And I think that's going to be so hard for other teams to defend when a lot of teams really only have 1 great perimeter defender. Some might have 2. But I don't know that how many teams really have 3 really good perimeter defenders. So I think that's going to cause a lot of problems for some other teams that UConn's going to play coming up. And I do think once this team gets to where they need to be offensively, and if they continue the defense we've seen out of them to start this year, then they definitely have a chance to be going and get number 7 this year. I really do deep down believe. But overall, I think that's going to take care of everything I had on this episode today. Again, really excited to see UConn hopefully get their get back in the Jimmy V Classic against Florida. Really unfortunate how they went out last year in the NCAA tournament, but could rewrite that narrative on Tuesday night. So definitely going to be looking forward to that. Really happy to see how this Huskies team has played to start the year. And again, stairway to 7. Let's go do it. But until next episode, I'll see you all next time.